Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There are no apologies for absence. Are there any declarations of interest? Noted. The minutes on pages 4 to 10 of the agenda, I take as matter of record.
Agreed.
Are there any matters arising? None. There are no written questions from the public, no written questions from councillors, and no petitions. Item 8, to know the forward plan on pages 11 to 25. Are there any questions? Charles?
On page 16, it refers to the HTS Property Environment Limited Contract Awards Phase 2, which are planned to come in September. I appreciate we've got a report later on the agenda, Chair, that refers to Phase 1 with 2.9 million of contract awards, which will be discussed by the committee. My concern is when you look at the contracts that are set out in the first phase, and then you make an educated guess about what will come in Phase 2, that's programmed for September, one of those is probably going to be heating repairs. Now, as we're approaching the winter at that time, would it be necessary to actually bring forward the Phase 2 contract awards? Because how can you replace heating elements in council tenants' homes in the middle of winter when you're awarding the contract in late September?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I recognise that concern, and that has been discussed with colleagues from HTS and the council, and we're working very closely together to minimise the impact, particularly the district heating implementation. And we're working out the phases can be completed before the Christmas period, before the winter, and those after. So I can reassure you we are working towards getting a balanced view of how to minimise the impact on customers and equally deliver on the council's priority and how the capital programme.
Chair, if I'm grateful for that answer, Andrew. Can councillors have a note on how many people will be affected by the heating element replacements that would need to be scheduled in Phase 2? And can there also be an urgent deadline and timetable set out for those works? Because it will be during the winter time probably this is going to happen. I know that you've recognised that this is a concern. All councillors would be very concerned about this as well, and I don't want families to be left in the cold during the winter time.
Yes, happy to do that. And there is a principle I've set that there will be no works undertaken during the winter period.
Thank you, Chair. Another question, page 23, the local development plan that now sets a timescale of March 2018. East Herts District Council has published publicly a report on the West Essex and East Herts Strategic Housing Market Assessment that looks at the objective assessed need for housing. That report that was published this month has said that Harlow will need to have an additional 800 homes reflected in its local plan for the planning period 2011 all the way up to 2013, which is the 33, which is the current planning period. Given this impact and the question I asked last week at full council, will the council now confirm whether it will open up the local plan to a full Regulation 18 consultation like other district authorities in our strategic housing area who are consulting about the impact of new housing? Harlow residents will want to have their say, particularly now that new housing and the spectre of more additional homes in Harlow is on the cusp of being approved because of this objective housing assessment that's been set out for our corridor in Essex.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's the latest iteration of the ORS report on the 2014 stats from central government. Councillor Charles may recall that at the time the council decided on its housing number, we actually built in headroom because of our need for affordable housing, and because our quota and our land values and our sale values mean that we're not getting a 33% affordable housing from development. So the decision was taken by the council at the time to actually aim for a higher housing allocation than the minimum statistics said at the time. So there's sufficient headroom in the sites and the strategic sites around Harlow that we don't need to find any more land to be able to accommodate that.
But I follow up, and I'm grateful for that, Graham. The issue is with the new objective assessment that all local authorities are being asked to look at additional homes, quite significant additional homes in other local authority areas. And of course, you've seen this report. The impact of that will probably mean that there will need to be further discussions over the housing requirements for this corridor based on the new assessment. So while I recognise that, as you say, that there was headroom built in, there may be a requirement because of the pressures all local authorities are now going to have based on this report that was just published this month, that there could be a wider impact. The question I have, Chair, I'd be grateful if there could be an update to all councillors, from yourself, Graham, if you could, I'd be grateful, on what impact this will have for the whole corridor. Because, of course, you're privy to the negotiations over this. Normal councillors who don't sit on those committees don't understand the impact of this report. It is quite concerning to see that there's been an increase in housing projections. So I'd be grateful for a further note after this Cabinet meeting.
We'll certainly arrange that for that to happen. I just have to say more generally that the base data and the methodology for assessing objectively assessed need is a constantly moving piece. And we have to put a marker in the ground. So by putting it bluntly, we have to get on with it. Because the longer we wait, adding in additional consultation, what have you, will just mean they'll keep changing. So the Secretary of State at the Local Government Association conference last week said that they're going to start a consultation later this year on a standardised methodology, and goodness knows when that's going to complete. So we can keep waiting until it does settle, but it hasn't settled over the last several years, and there's no likelihood it's going to settle over the next several years. In the meantime, we need to get on.
Yeah.
I believe any further questions on the local plan? About the local plan. Let's get back to the right. So forward plan is so noted. Right, and then also on item 9, to note the decision for the portfolio holder for housing on page 26. Any questions or comments on that before we note it? Thank you. Right, moving on to item 10, which is the joint performance plan report on pages 27 to 67. So I'll move this item, the recommendation on page 27.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. Just by a brief introduction, again, it's very tight financial control. There's a relatively small, in percentage terms, underspend, reflecting the strong financial control that continues and has done for a number of years. And also, in terms of the particular performance, as the report notes, the vast majority of the performance indicators were met. There are 3 that are noted in the report around tree works, rough sleeping and temporary accommodation. 2 of them are largely outside our control and reflect broader national trends. Mike, would say if we briefly go to the...
Thank you, Chair. As you said, it was really reflecting the good control of service budgets being maintained. With an actual underspend on the budget of just over £500,000, which is just under 1% of the gross general fund. The variations can be read in the report, but primarily there's the additional income from car parking, there's the additional income from garages, which will now go back into the base budget. That was where we transferred some of the garages from the housing account to the general fund. The increased occupancy of the commercial properties at Latin Bush is putting income, and lower than expected pension costs. I'd also like to talk about the officers' role in this, because the officers, by stealth, have actually been saving this authority quite a bit of money as well. We're increasingly starting to put aside our own insurance fund, and officers have been able to make genuine savings because we're actually building up our own insurance fund on this. Costs over audit, I always thought the audit commission costs were exorbitant, and one of the few things that the Tories did that was any good was abolishing the audit commission. We continue to actually make savings over the audit as well because of the efficiency which the staff deliver that service. So also it's hats off to officers saving this authority money as well, making a contribution to the underspend on the budget. Chair.
Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I too welcome the underspend. I have a question for the Leader of the Council. When you take out the carry forward and the windfalls, we actually have an underspend of almost £500,000 on the controllable budgets. Would you agree with me that actually, when I moved our alternative budget at the beginning of the year, that actually I was correct in identifying most of those savings, which were poo-pooed at the time by the administration, and actually had you have agreed with me, you could have invested that money in much needed underfunded services and possibly delivered the cut to council tax that we were proposing. And in short, this would have met the shortfall in the medium-term financial strategy that he was talking about at the time.
It's all well to be sort of clever in hindsight. The point is that it's a less than 1% variance in a quite a large budget. And it's incumbent on the administration and the council to take a prudent approach to budgeting. And clearly, where there are consistent underspends, we will take that into account when formulating next year's budget, which we've already started considering. But I say it is a small amount of money, and difficult to predict in advance.
Just on a minor point, I wasn't being clever with hindsight. I was going forward into the future when I said it. You're talking in hindsight.
Any further?
Thank you, Chair. You could have exercised some degree of hindsight in February. If I take you back to the performance report in December, you were then forecasting, and I quote, a favourable variation on controllable budgets of £342,000, representing a net favourable variance of 0.55% of the gross general fund budget. So the money was already there.
In the year just gone, which is different to making a budget provision for the year coming.
Sorry. In December,
Yes, absolutely.
you had a forecast of an underspend of £342,000, yet you chose to increase council tax by 1.5%.
There is a difference between an underspend in a single year and an ongoing revenue imputation. And I'm sorry you don't understand the distinction, Councillor Carter, but there we are.
Perhaps you can remind me how many years there has been an overspend in, say, the last 12 or 15 years?
So, as I've said, where there are repeatable underspends, so not just in aggregate, but specifically, then clearly we will ensure that we take those into account when doing the budget for the following year. But you can't extrapolate from a forecast in year for the current year and the ongoing revenue implications for the following year. So if it was the same specific item every year, then you might have a point, and it's not.
I don't have all the papers in front of me, but I seem to recall that some of the savings achieved last year were actually taken into the base budget and would have been ongoing. Just one other point. £505,000 is reflected as 0.81% of the gross revenue budget. Those of you with calculators will quickly work out that that's a gross budget of £62.7 million. Now, I've been studying these figures for quite some time, as you're probably aware. I don't recognise a gross spend of £62.7 million. I know you have lies, damn lies and statistics, but £62.7 million is pushing it a bit, even including the spend on housing benefits. So perhaps somebody can help me what their figure is.
Can we be clear over this? Some of this money that being referred to, like the garage rents, for instance, is now in the base budget for next year. So we've taken account of some of the consistent underspendings and have put them into the budget for next year already. I'm sure John will actually help you out with the actual figure.
In terms of the question, Chair, if I may, in terms of the question in relation to gross expenditure, the budget that was set for 16-17 across each of the services, we have detailed out total expenditure in gross terms, as well as setting out income there as well below that. And if you take the aggregates of all those across all services, then that generates the gross budget around about the figure that you referred to, Councillor Carter.
So where do I find this figure? Where do I find this figure?
Where did you find it?
Oh, within the budget book for 16-17.
Can you tell me what page?
It's across all services. So for the first one, under Chief Execs, is on page 5.
So, sorry, with respect, it's not there. I won't be able to find 62.7 million.
You won't find one number, no.
But if you added them all together, you would be able to find that.
But if I'm trying to work out what that figure is now, I can't, because I've no idea what figures you've included and where the figures are.
So just
So
take,
the figures mean...
just take the gross budget of each of the service lines and add them up. Why do you calculate it necessary?
Well, can you find me the figures to begin with before I get the calculator?
They're in the budget book if you add the figures up. And they're the figures that you just suggested.
But there are lots of figures, funny enough, in there. Anyway, we're not making much progress. Okay, moving on, if I can look at page 32 of the report, paragraph 22b, where we talk about JVC 305, there is a comment there, and I quote, "Resource has been reallocated within the existing call centre, enabling ownership of emergencies to be prioritised," unquote. Can anybody explain what that means? No? Thought not.
So just before you carry on, I know this has become a regular occurrence, but if you have a set of detailed technical questions, it would be extraordinarily helpful if you could provide them in advance, you can provide a written answer. Because I suspect we're about to several dozen questions off this page.
I could say the same thing about £67 million, but I won't. On page 33, paragraph 23e, number of households living in temporary accommodation, it says, and I quote, "In addition, welfare reforms have impacted following the introduction of the benefits cap," unquote. Aside from the fact you're verbalising a noun, can somebody explain what the impact has been on the number of people in temporary accommodation arising from the introduction of the benefits cap over a year ago? I mean, somebody must have that figure in order to arrive at that comment on page 33.
Can I ask that, Chair? I think the point being made, Councillor Carter, is that we've increased the number of temporary accommodation through phase 1 and phase 2, and like phase 3 of the legislative generation, as well as the pressure both from removal of those families and other TA families requiring temporary accommodation. So we're just trying to balance that too in terms of the report in effect. And that was the point we're trying to be made.
Thank you. Moving on to page 49. Where we're looking at the variances and so forth. Under planning services, about the middle of the page, we're talking, or you're talking about, a self-build register earmarked reserve and a brownfield register earmarked reserve. Can somebody tell me when these reserves were created, who approved them, what is their purpose, and what is the balance?
Chair, I've got a load of those questions. I'll come back in detail, but this is part of the requirements under the planning policy framework now to ensure that we take into account self-build, small, medium enterprises as well in the housing stock, and to deal with brownfield. I think this is an internal allocation of cash within the planning service, but I need to check the service before I can come back.
But why do we need money for a brownfield register?
I'll have to come back to that.
Okay. On page 50, under variances for governance, there's a reference there to the Chair's strategic reserve. Can somebody explain why the Chair needs a strategic reserve? We never had one before.
It's a title we give internally. It is basically the chair's budget. So there's 5,000 or whatever it is figure was underspent in the chair's budget. So that's what we call it in-house.
I'll repeat, Councillor Costa, that it would have been extraordinarily helpful if you going into this level of punditry, you just submit the question to the government and you would have been a lot happier in advance.
Sorry, how do you describe that?
This level of pedantry, I describe it as.
If I can move on now to page 67, proposed end of year earmarked reserve movements. I have a bit of an interest, as you can tell, in all these various little slush funds being created hither and thither. Can't imagine why. The penultimate line there is the severance reserve. £390,000 has been added during the year just gone, used to finance redundancy costs. If you add that to the existing balance, you come to a figure of a shade under £2 million. I'm just wondering whether the leader can explain how many members of staff he is planning to make redundant that will require a figure of that magnitude.
Chair, over a period of time we've actually built this up, and in fact I believe it started more than when we came into it. The government, in fact, has been so difficult over local government finance that what's actually been facing this authority has been completely unknown. And therefore, to be prudent, money's been set aside. This will now stop, because I agree with you, the fund is actually quite excessive, and there is no need to actually put any more money into this fund at this point. But given the vagaries of the Tory government in the last 7 years, goodness knows what would have actually happened to local authorities if we continue to go down that path. We seem to actually, because of the outcome of the general election as well, we're actually going to probably be in a better position, because the government will actually start listening to local authorities and what their needs are. And we won't need to actually worry so much about this. So it has been a concern what the government has actually been up to, how they've actually treated local authorities, and to be prudent, we've actually had to protect the staff in this particular way. I agree that now the fund has actually reached that level, we need to actually make further contributions at this present time.
Thank you, Chair. I'll follow on from that question that the Councillor Parker asked, and I'll come back to my original point. That's another £390,000 which I identified at the beginning of the year that needn't have been put into the reserve. And Councillor Danvers has agreed with me that he feels the reserve is excessive now. And so I've heard tonight that we've had increase in car parking, that we're letting more places. We've identified almost just shy of £1 million of money that I was told couldn't possibly be there when I made the predictions at the beginning of the year. And so I come back to the leader of the council. instead of, we always talk about Yahoo politics and shouting each other down, but when I put forward very sensible savings, when I put forward very sensible advice about this particular reserve, for example, I was shouted down and told, no, 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 it's all doom and gloom, it's all doom and gloom. And actually, the money could have gone into much needed services much earlier on. And be it a political choice or not, you may have decided not to still continue with the council tax cut. That's your prerogative, that's your choice. But it could have gone into other services instead of just sitting here slushing around. There are people that have lost adult nappy waste collections. 25,000 pounds, it could have gone towards that. There are people that have had their bulky waste collection charges go up. It could have gone towards that. All of these things, they were small ticket items compared to this 390,000. We know no more about the economy or the state government finance or anything else now than we did at the beginning of the year. And what I'm hearing is a lot of people saying after the event, oh look, all the savings we've got. I think that the leader of the council and his cabinet should take more advice and listen more closely to others around them instead of feeling so incensed that people have actually taken the time to read these figures and offer advice and ask questions about them.
So in all of these things, this is about taking long-term sustainable decisions in the face of considerable uncertainty. And I know that members opposite want to grab the headlines in a political leaflet. But if we'd taken the advice from members opposite over the last few years, this council's finances would be a considerably worse place than it is now. Now we are in a position where, while there's still considerable uncertainty to go, and still cuts to be made, we can start looking on a longer-term basis because of the sound, sensible and long-term decisions that this administration has made. So I make no apology for that. And because of that sound, sensible and long-term decision-making, this council is now in a far better position than it has been for some time. But there is still significant uncertainty. So it wasn't that long ago that members sat on that side of the table were lauding the retention of business rates that would get tens of millions of pounds into the council's coffers. And it wasn't true at the time, and it's even less true now. There's considerable doubt that it implemented at all, and certainly not in the timeframes that were originally announced by 2019. But I'll repeat, we will make all that decision.
Just on the Trumpian type comment you made about us making massive predictions about business retention rates, I don't believe us making any such predictions. So I think you might like to go back and look at your notes on that one.
I'll dig out the quote from Councillor Charles specifically, yes. I will.
You go.
Thank you. Just before we, before you move on from this particular item, just mention that this report is for the quarter and the year ending 31st of March 2017. But it's not being presented until the 20th of July, more than 3.5 months late. So not only have we completed quarter two, we're now into quarter three, and you're only now looking at quarter one performance. So perhaps I can refer you to the draft minutes of the Shareholders Subcommittee of the 15th of June, minute 5, which is on page 126 of this agenda. I quote, Councillor Klempner said he wanted the subcommittee to look at the form, nature and timeliness of reporting. Resolved that making available of information in a timely manner and review of the content and style of performance reports would be included in the subcommittee's work plan. This was in response to the performance report for the period February to March 2017, presented a whole month earlier than the Council's own figures to this committee for the same period. So I'm just wondering, Chairman, whether you're going to make the same recommendation tonight for these performance reports to this committee, or is it one rule for you and one rule for others?
So as you will recall, Councillor Carter, the HGS report didn't contain February at all. Its granularity was inappropriate for the purpose it was produced for, and there are ongoing conversations about that. So it's in that context which I made those remarks at the point. Now this is the end-of-year report, and is subject to the full end-of-year reporting rigor, including the audit of council and what have you. And so that's the reason why this particular report has the timing it has. And I believe it's actually it will be actually produced earlier this year than is normal. So yes, I would absolutely wish that the reporting of events was nearer the occurrence of those events. But to compare the context that I made the remarks about HGS with an end-of-year report, which has a formal financial status, I think is clearly shows a level of misunderstanding.
Chairman, you make an additional clarification as well, that the draft statements of accounts were placed on the Council's website on the 10th of June this year, which is considerably earlier than the Council has ever achieved that previously. It is only possible to produce the outturn report that has been presented here on this agenda once completion of balance sheet and all numbers that are going into the statement of accounts have been completed. It is only then that we know that that is the outturn. Clarification, this Council has managed to achieve a month's saving in time in closing the accounts.
Well, I echo what my colleagues have said about tonight's performance report. The truth is that there is an underspend, there was predicted to be an underspend, and the budget that Councillor Perrin set out last year for the budget for this council actually was a prudent and wise budget that would have ensured that council taxpayers wouldn't be forced with another council tax cut under Labour. The point about Labour's decision making when it comes to budgets is that every single year they're looking to increase taxes on hard-working local people, and that decision is a political decision. And you can't escape that fact as leader of this council that you have made a political decision to increase council tax. When we were in administration, we run a tight ship. The finances, they were Councillor Danvers, and I'll take no lectures from Comrade Danvers over how to manage finances. The bottom line was, when we were in administration, we run a tight ship, prudent finances, and we cut council tax. That's the choice that voters have. Now, Councillor Kempner keeps on saying that our decisions and our comments are all based on putting something on a leaflet. That couldn't be further from the truth. When you look at our record, when we were in administration, and we set this council on the right course, the things that we achieved with the crematorium, the waste collection, and cutting council tax show that actually we do care about residents and we take long-term decisions. So I'll have no one give me lectures on decision making, because we have been there too. We have been part of an administration that took long-term decisions in the best interests of this town. But when it comes, I want to come back to this report here tonight. This sets a marker and a tone for the next few years. And if Labour want to keep heaping on taxes on local council taxpayers, let them carry on, because at the ballot box, people will take a really dim view of heaping council tax onto residents when they have an underspend. Voters will recognise that when we come up to the local elections, and I hope you take that into consideration as leader.
So, well, thank you for the political speech. Look,
Political form.
clearly voters have made decisions over the last few years at the ballot box, and that's why I'm sat here as leader of this council. But quite frankly, to say you made, you don't mind, Councillor Charles, I didn't expect to listen to you when you were speaking. Quite frankly, for you to say that you took long-term decisions, when this administration took over, there was 1 year of funding for discretionary services. If we'd taken the wise recommendations from the councillors opposite, this council would have several £1 million less to spend, and that would inevitably result in cuts to services. So I will repeat that you can characterise it into a political speech all you like. I will make the decisions that are right for the sustainability of both the finances of this council, but more importantly for the services that this council provides that Harlow residents rely on. Have we concluded the political speech making now?
One more time.
It is very brief and not of a political nature.
Well, to a certain extent, the tight ship that was there was the one that actually cut council staff pay. Let's remind ourselves of that. and as you rightly said, Chair, left no monies in the long term for the playhouse, for the museum, for Pets Corner, a massive black hole that we actually had to get out of. So cutting, if we call the tight ship, cutting staff pay, losing quite a few of our discretionary services. The Gypsy Rose Lees over there. The Gypsy Rose Lees over there with their crystal balls need to actually predict something else.
Right, I'm going to draw this to a close. It's clearly getting way beyond the item on the agenda now. So, the recommendations on pages 27 and 28, A to C, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 11, the Housing Revenue Account Outturn Report 2016-17.
I so moved, Chair. Second, Chair. £1 million of the gross housing revenue account. The underspend is directly linked to some of the forward, the carryover, the forward proposals that were actually carried over from the capital scheme for 2017 and 18. So that money is going to be spent, but it's just there to be spent in the next financial year.
Councillor Perry.
Question, Chair, just before we go on and we get into our questions, if we have any, just wanted to understand, wouldn't you prefer it if we didn't ask technical questions? You prefer it if we didn't ask questions of a political nature? What type of questions would you prefer being asked of an administration overseeing the budget?
I'm more than happy to ask technical questions. But the point I was simply making was that if you ask them in advance, you can have the answer by the time of this committee meeting, rather than just trying to make advance and make it. That's my simple point I was making. Have you actually got any questions?
Not personally, no.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you. It's not really, well, yes, there is a question, but there's also more of a comment. I'm grateful for Councillor Danvers' summarisation of the report on the housing revenue account. I've been trying to follow the housing revenue account probably for about the last 15 years at least. And I have to say, this is the most complex report I've ever come across because of all the variations, the capital spending, impact of depreciation, and everything else like this. But the one thing I do want to mention specifically is the housing revenue account table on page 73. Paragraph 30. So Councillor Danvers carefully says, well, there's £1 million underspend, which is mostly carryovers. If we look at that table, there's the original estimated balance at March 17 of 5.2 million, increase reported at 15-16 out another 5 million, less carry forward requests of 4 million, adjusted balance at 31st of March 16, and then we've got the service budget variations, capital programme variations, and balance as at 31st of March of £12.9 million, of which there is 6.4 million carryover and 661,000 of revenue carryover, leaving a balance of £5.8 million, which is somewhat in excess of the recommended minimum working balance. Bearing in mind the much wailing and gnashing of teeth about the impact of the reduction in rents over the last couple of years, we now seem to be in a situation where the HRA has a balance of £5.8 million. I would have thought that given the demands on housing maintenance, housing repairs, not to mention the £208 million of debt to repay, there may be some prime need for that particular figure. If someone's got a hidden agenda, perhaps they'd like to expose it now. Well, the question is why is there £5.8 million of cash lying around on the HRA with no apparent purpose?
I can answer that, Chair. I've worked with Councillor Carter for many years of housing revenue account finance as well as self-financing. I think he recognises that balances for self-financing took on a new guise in 2012, and the movement in capital revenue and the size of the balances frightened a lot of members back in 2012, and the Plan and the Housing Revenue Council put together. I'd just like to make 3 points, if I may, in terms of the context for now and going forward. The minimum balance was increased, I think, a couple of years ago in anticipation of the implementation of the Housing and Planning Bill. And there were issues in there during a rollout that the council felt prudently needed to make a reserve for. I think one was the sale of high value voids and what happens after the freeze on rent increases going forward. So the minimum reserve balance has increased, but I think the balances themselves, the minimum reserve balance and the balances are there to support the capital programme going forward. If I mention the word componentisation, which is going to be a big issue going forward, and those balances are to safeguard the housing revenue account, and independent advisors given us that we are well placed to deal with the risk going forward. However, I'm sure Councillor would recognise that going forward we are perhaps in a different game in terms of what's going to happen from the Grenfell fire disaster, what's going to happen in terms of the further implementation of the Housing Planning Bill. So we need to think about how we use those balances in the future, and it's time to review those and how to take them forward.
Further questions on this paper?
Agreed.
Just for the record, the recommendations on pages 68 and 69, A to D, are we agreed? Agreed. Moving on to item 12, which is the capital programmes out to report. I know that Councillor Dunbar couldn't change it.
Yeah, can I move this, but also move some slight amendments, Chair, to, I think everything has been circulated. C, the gremlins have got into the actual report, the figure is £5,000, should actually be £2,058,000, and that would be reflected on page 87 on table 5. But the second thing, that's just an admin thing. The more important thing, Chair, is that unfortunately we have to move a recommendation E that additional 100,000 be allocated from the non-housing capital fund underspend to be carried forward to fund the completion of the demolition of the Hummingbird Public House. And really, I think this has been circulated, and if it hasn't, it can be. As the demolition has progressed, there has been a discovery of concealed asbestos, which was not detected by the consultants on the original survey. Its removal from the building requires specialist equipment and sealed conditions in order to prevent any airborne particles escaping, and that's estimated to cost up to 100,000. So I'd like to move a recommendation E for the additional 100,000. Having said all of that, Chair, in moving item 12, the Council is approving here a programme of £21.4 million for housing services and £7 million for non-housing capital schemes. Obviously the report actually specifies that in far more detail.
Second, Chair.
Just a minor question with the Chair, and it's not to quibble over the gremlins, so I appreciate that happens, but will it be officially amended, because this is a public document, will this be amended in future documents? Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? So in that case, recommendations A to E with the amendment to recommendation C, the figure from 1.805 million to 2.058 million. Are we agreed? Agreed. Moving on to item 13 on page 95 of the report, the Energy Procurement Framework Review.
Yes, Chair, the existing arrangements for purchasing fuel or energy with other options, and are recommending that we change our purchasing agent save us further money from the money that we've already been saving by the existing agreement, and also offer certain additional services which will assist in our administration. So I would recommend approve the recommendations A and B on the agenda.
Any questions or comments? So, shall we read the recommendations on page 95, recommendations A and B?
Agreed.
Agreed. Moving on to item 14, on page 2, the HDF Property Environmental Contract Awards, which has been referred to already.
I formally move this, Chair.
And I will second that. Are there any questions, comments? In that case, the recommendation on page 1 and 2, recommendation A, are we so agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Right, moving on to item 15 on community safety.
Sorry, move that, Chair.
And
No, sorry, I'm delighted to second this recommendation.
Just indulge me for remarks, Chair. Just wanted to really celebrate this report that's going forward. In the time that I've been in the council, one team has always been quite outstanding and quite small in reach. Its grasp has always been our community safety team, and the role the council's been able to play within community to try and break down and reduce antisocial behaviour, improve public spaces, and crack down on environmental crime. Quite often it's these low-key crimes that affect our residents' lives, that maybe most of us will probably get complaints about from our own residents in our own wards. I know it's one of the, if I get any complaints, so they tend to be higher around those and other areas of crime. And being able to take this money and be able to increase that team, to be able to focus these particular new officers will be particularly focused on the community. Sorry, Chair, I'll let people finish their conversations. So obviously this particular team will be focused. I'm happy to wait for them to talk.
Joe.
It's a particular team will be focused in the community, working with the community, going to schools, trying to crack down on our many areas. This is part of a whole package, alongside improving the areas in Stowe and Bush Fair in particular. The Stowe have done a lot of work with traders on what that's going to look like, and we look forward to engaging with the traders and the community in Bush Fair to take those plans forward. I think it's a really positive piece of work that in the whole could help us to work to make sure that the council is these officers be highly visible, approachable, and also exploring public space protection orders, give us the capacity to explore them when necessary. I think it's a really positive report to improve our town and public realm, and I'm happy to move it, Chair.
Yes, okay. Yeah, am I okay? Sorry, can I just also endorse this? And whilst we're congratulating the officers who do a fantastic job, I do believe this is a really good example of community engagement. And certainly I know there's a couple of the councillors in the room, can I compliment the local councillors for these areas who have actually been in direct contact with the local residents, the local businesses, the local community, and have worked with them, with our team, to try to come up with a solution that not only makes you feel it's a good place, it's a safe place, but from my point of enterprise, it should increase footfall, which could increase business activities in these areas. So I think it is a good news story. I think it shows that we're working together to make a difference to these two particular areas, both the Stowe and Bush Fair. That's why I'm delighted that the Cabinet member has been able to put these recommendations to us tonight.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments. I think the community safety team do a fantastic job, and I'm somebody that's certainly engaged with them in the past, and more power to their elbow, as it were. Just a technical question, if I may. on the extra £200,000. Is that additional funding that you're putting into the fund from the underspends that you've received, or are you accelerating the process of moving the community safety funding out of discretionary service fund into the base budget?
The particular proposal is about funding the remainder of this financial year for this proposal, i.e. the additional officers. We fully recognise that will have additional budget pressures next year and ongoing, and there are separate discussions about what we do with discretionary services to become clear near the budget. But this proposal is specifically for funding this year's implementation of these proposals, but recognising there are ongoing implications of that.
So if I may just say, so it's not accelerating the removal from the discretionary fund, this is an additional £200,000, which is fair enough. That's committed only for 1 year, correct, at this moment in time, whilst you work out the ongoing implications for future financing. Have I just got that correct?
Correct, but I just want to add on to that, that this is a statement of intent.
Yes.
So it is absolutely just using the underspend this year to start the process earlier than needing to have to wait for next year's budget. But we absolutely recognise, and I've already done some work on next year's budget to recognise the impact of next year.
I would really like to see that work because we heard earlier that we don't like services being funded with only a 1 year budget, and if we're employing new people, if we're increasing the size of the service, we wouldn't want those people's jobs to sort of be uncertain, as it were, because they do a very good job, this team, and we won't want uncertainty in that team. So are the people that you're employing, are they going to be on a sort of a 1 year temporary contract until you've completed that work, so you know for certain you're able to continue the size of the team? Because I certainly would like to see the team increase on a sustained basis, as everybody would, because of the marvellous work that they do.
No, indeed. So I only repeat the firm statement that this is an ongoing commitment. So the staff will be employed on a permanent basis, not on a short-term contract, and we will make provision in next year's budget to the ongoing service. It's not that they're making only a 6-month commitment. It's just that as part of this underspend, we're kick-starting that process. But as a further administration, this will continue.
Can I also just clarify that some of that money is also about realm improvement.
Yeah.
So it would be
Sorry, Tony, I missed that.
some of the money that's been allocated is for realm improvement, which so it would be one-off.
I just want to say, the whole push, the premise of this is fantastic, you know, I really buy it. I just wanted to understand the technical aspect of where the money's coming from, how sustainable it is. I certainly won't poo-poo the efforts here that are going into the work that this team does, and I really do welcome it.
Yeah, can I just echo what Russell has said and what other councillors have said? And actually, it's all councillors, irrespective of political party, welcome the efforts of Marisha Rudgley, Christine Selby, Joan Greer, and that team that all work together and deal with antisocial behaviour issues. The discussion Russell and I were having is a normal conversation that councillors have when we're preparing to make comments. We actually wanted to support this report. That was the pure exercise that we were doing, and it's very unfortunate that there was that interruption, because actually we wanted to welcome what you were doing and actually support what you were doing. We were just talking to each other as colleagues to say well done to the antisocial behaviour team and the excellent work that they do. I think we need to take a step back sometimes and realise actually on things like this which have cross-party appeal, people want to support them. And that's the pure exercise that Councillor Perry and I were doing, because actually the work of this team is fantastic and all councillors welcome it and all councillors interact with them on a regular basis because there are challenges across the board.
Any further questions?
Let's do it.
Right, so recommendation on so this is the approval of additional resource to fund regional resources for this year, with the clear understanding of their long-term commitment, plus some one-off costs for polygon improvements at Stowe and Bushfair. Recommendation A, are we agreed?
Agreed.
So the next item is item 16A, which is a referral from audit standards statement,
So moved, Chair.
and I will second. Have we got any
No, it's from the committee.
comments? Any positive copies? Does that already been standard at the governance? So recommendation on page 112, A and B. Also agree. And we move on to noting the minutes of the shareholders subcommittee, which was referred to. Interesting meeting. So noted. There are no matters of urgent business. I'm afraid now I have to sort of read the statement. So the following item is taken in private session on the grounds it is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as specified in the paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act of 1972. If and so long as in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Paragraph 3, information relating to financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority